Tonight, prayers for the Piano Man, the devastating diagnosis for Billy Joel. The legendary singer canceling all of his tour dates, revealing he's battling a brain disorder, how it's impacting his hearing, vision, and balance, and what he's saying about returning to the stage. Targeting Apple. President Trump threatening a huge tariff on iPhones if they're not produced in America. The price tag, if they were, estimated to be $3,500 each. What the president now says about hitting other smartphones. Holiday travel crunch. This Memorial Day weekend set to smash records, even as much of the country faces a soggy start to summer. We're tracking the storms. New arrest in the manhunt for those New Orleans fugitives as yet another prisoner in Louisiana breaks free. This one, an accused killer who'd escaped before. Cause of the crash, the airport systems that weren't working when a small plane crashed into a San Diego neighborhood, as we learn about how neighbors came together to help each other get to safety. Firing off, a wild scene at a packed Florida beach, in Army Rangers shooting blanks into the air without warning civilian beachgoers. The punishment for the 18 soldiers involved. And justice for Kim, the 8 people convicted today for tying up and robbing Kim Kardashian in Paris. What she says about the court's decision. Plus, the dog who's shot to fame after fighting off a pack of coyotes, getting his forever home. Top story starts right now. Good evening. I'm Ellison Barber in for Tom Llamas. Tonight, the Piano Man forced to step away from the keys. Billy Joel canceling the rest of his tour due to a brain disorder diagnosis. The Grammy Award-winning artist making the shocking announcement on social media today, adding that doctors advised him to refrain from performing at this time. It comes months after a scare during his concert in Connecticut. You can see the legendary star throwing his mic stand at the crowd, losing his balance and falling on his side. Joel was diagnosed with normal pressure hydrocephalus, or NPH. It is a brain disorder involving abnormal fluid in or around the brain that impacts memory as well as mobility. The Piano Man just turning 76 2 weeks ago. We have not heard from his family since he made the announcement, but after decades of tours, including a 10-year-long residency at Madison Square Garden, the big question tonight, will we see the music legend return to the stage? We speak with a doctor in just a moment about the troubling diagnosis. Joining us now is NBC medical analyst Dr. Ven Gupta. Dr. Gupta, this disease has a very scary sounding name, and anything that impairs vision, hearing, and balance, it can certainly be debilitating. How serious is this?
Ellison, it's serious if left untreated, and usually the key here is early diagnosis to enable early treatment. So key symptoms to be on the lookout for, especially if you're 70 years of age and older. This incidence increases as we get older, but still pretty rare. Gait imbalance, that's new. Urinary incontinence, you just can't control your bladder. And if the new onset confusion, that constellation of symptoms in somebody that's older should prompt at least a thought that this might be happening.
What is the treatment typically, and what are the chances that Billy Joel, who you obviously don't treat, but speculating here, but what are the chances that someone like him could make a full recovery and then carry on with what they were doing in the past, in his case, return to the stage?
The treatment is usually, Ellison, it's called a shunt. And so we actually just physically, it's our way of removing the fluid around the brain that's in an enclosed space surrounded by the skull, basically just out of it. And there's a way to do that in a pretty standardized way across the country. It can be curative in the sense that it can at least treat the symptoms here. If there's an underlying cause for this developing in the first place, like an infection, bleeding, some cases a tumor, that's what we really want to target, is why did this happen in the first place? But to treat the acute symptoms, this is a tried and true approach, a shunt being placed, and I'm sure that's what's going to happen. In terms of recovery, again, it's about what the underlying cause is, but I suspect if the treatment is rendered as soon as possible, in the case of Billy Joel, he should be able to regain full recovery, functional recovery.
How common is this disease? Is this something that impacts a lot of Americans, and maybe just some of us hadn't heard of it until today?
I don't blame anybody for not having heard of it, because it's a word full, definitely a mouthful for just me as a doc. But I would say that this is not common amongst 7-year-olds. It's less than 1% in terms of incidence. And amongst those 80 years of age and older, it's about 5% in terms of incidence. And so this does increase over time. But again, just things to look out for if you're worried about a loved one or yourself is gait imbalance, bladder control, and worsening confusion, altered mental status that happens in a pretty acute window.
NBC's Dr. Ven Gupta, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now to Washington, where President Trump is ramping up his trade war once again, threatening new tariffs against the European Union, but also specifically targeting an American company, Apple. His threats sending shockwaves through the markets today. Here's NBC's Peter Alexander with the latest.
President Trump tonight is threatening to escalate his trade war, targeting some of America's closest allies and one of its biggest brands, Apple.
The iPhone, if they're going to sell it in America, I want it to be built in the United States.
If not, the president warns he'll slap a 25% tariff on Apple's most popular product. That same import tax, he says, would apply to all other smartphones built overseas. The president revealing his conversation with Apple CEO Tim Cook, who he met with days ago.
He said he's going to India to build plants. I said, that's okay to go to India, but you're not going to sell into here without tariffs.
President Trump's announcement today briefly interrupted.
Okay, it's only a congressman.
His own iPhone ringing twice. The president also warning he would impose a 50% tariff on products from the European Union beginning June 1st because trade talks, he says, are going nowhere.
It's time that we play the game the way I know how to play the game. You know, they've taken advantage of other people representing this country, and they're not going to do that any longer.
The threats injecting new chaos into America's trade relationships. Analysts warn an iPhone made in the U.S. could cost consumers up to $3,500, arguing it's unrealistic that production moves stateside anytime soon.
It's a fairy tale that Apple will be able to produce iPhones in the U.S. in the next 3 to 4 years.
As for that other tariff threat in Kansas City, Trent Austin sells tubas, trombones, and trumpets. A third of his instruments come from the EU.
What impact do the threat of these tariffs have on someone like you?
I think they paralyze our future planning. We cannot plan for the future until something is set in stone.
Austin says he supports the idea of Trump's tariffs if it means more goods are produced here, but warns in the near term, Americans are going to pay more.
There's no way we can get around this. Everything's going to cost more. That is the absolute certainty.
Peter Alexander joins us now, along with NBC's business and data correspondent Brian Chung. Peter, let's start with you, because Trump seemed to be very focused on Apple today. Do we know why? Why Apple, or why today?
Well, we don't know why today. We do know that he had a recent conversation with the CEO, Tim Cook, said it would have taken place in the last week or so. So clearly Apple has been on his mind as he communicated there. He said to Tim Cook, if you guys are going to build these things, it's going to have to be built. If you're going to sell these things in the U.S., they're going to have to be built in the U.S. The bottom line, though, as you heard, is fundamentally it would take a long time to sort of reshore all of Apple's production, and also would take tens of billions of dollars. So very unlikely that happens, if at all, anytime soon.
Brian, let's talk about the potential impact on consumers. And to that end, 2 questions for you. Tell us how much an iPhone would cost if they were made overseas, and then they are also hit with these tariffs. And then talk to us about what the price would look like if an iPhone was entirely made in the U.S.
Yeah, well, there's a group, the Consumer Technology Association, that modeled out what the impact would be of adding a 25% tariff on smartphones. And they estimate that it could be as much as $255 to the cost of an average phone. And by the way, it might not just cover an iPhone, because the president clarified in the Oval Office that essentially a tariff that would be structured that way would also have to include products like those from Samsung and other electronic makers as well. And because we don't make them here in the United States, that would likely increase costs. Now, Dan Ives, who is in Peter's piece, has also projected that if they made an iPhone in the United States, to the second half of your question, it would cost $3,500. Compare that to where it is right now, $1,200 to $1,300, depending on what model. That is a lot more expensive for consumers.
And Peter touched on this, Brian, but is there any world where Apple could move its operations over to the United States and entirely make iPhones here?
Yeah, well, contacts that I've been speaking with in the industry have said anything is possible in theory. However, the problem is how quickly could you do it? The fastest estimates would be something like 5 to 10 years, which, of course, covers the period after this presidential administration.
And, Peter, before we go, I have to ask you about where things stand in terms of ongoing negotiations related to trade and tariffs. Any progress or anything we should watch this weekend?
It's a good question. You'll remember the president promised dozens of deals in 90 days back in April. Now we're at about the halfway point. There isn't a lot to show for it with the United Kingdom. We know that both sides have lowered tariffs, so there is an agreement there. But across the board, there's been very little else to show. And it also demonstrates just how complex, how challenging these trade deals are right now. And what it means is, as they reach the end of this 90-day pause that the president had announced back in April, it's July 9th. The president and some of his aides have acknowledged they may just have to set a new tariff when those reciprocal tariffs basically were supposed to go back into place.
Thanks for making us smarter. Great to have you both here on set. Peter Alexander, Brian Chung, thank you. Tonight, the summer travel season unofficially begins. Millions are set to hit the roads and skies in record numbers for the holiday weekend. But cold temperatures and severe storms are threatening to slow travel and maybe disrupt some outdoor plans. NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns is standing by to time out the storms for us. But first, Aaron McLaughlin reports on the great holiday getaway.
More than 45 million people, an all-time record, are expected to travel 50 miles or more this holiday weekend, according to AAA.
It's just awful. 4 accidents already that I passed today.
What's happening out there?
I don't know. Bumper to bumper. It's very scary stuff.
Despite the rainy roads and chillier than average temps in the Northeast.
It is 53 degrees and raining at the end of May. I didn't want to see this jacket again until December.
With TSA expecting to screen 18 million passengers around the holiday, all eyes on the troubled Newark airport after a recent series of disturbing communication outages. United Airlines today reported immediate improvement in arrival delays after the FAA cut back the number of flights per hour. In Dallas, long lines greeted passengers this morning, some delayed by a suspicious item that brought out the bomb squad. On top of the rush at the nation's largest airports,
I made it with like 5 minutes to spare to get on the plane, So I was rushing, and it was ridiculous.
New requirements for travels, though TSA says the Real ID rollout has been successful.
93% of passengers are presenting a real ID or another acceptable form of ID. And if you don't have one, encourage you just to come a little early because we're giving extra screening.
The record number of travelers, including me, on my way from New York City to New Jersey, and it's bumper to bumper. This Memorial Day weekend, nearly 9 out of 10 travelers are driving, 39.4 million in total, a million more than last year. Helping move the drivers along, gas prices at $3.20 a gallon on average, well below this time last year. And for folks out west, stunning cliffside views just in time for Memorial Day. The famed Pacific Coast Highway now open, months after the devastating fires.
And Aaron McLaughlin joins us now from Secaucus, New Jersey. Aaron, for those already at their weekend destinations, what's the guidance for the best time to travel home?
Well, Allison, AAA says your best shot of avoiding traffic like this is to travel in the morning. And if you are heading home on Monday, they suggest taking off by 2 p.m. with peak congestion expected between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. Allison.
Aaron McLaughlin, thank you. Let's bring in Bill Cairns now for your holiday forecast. Bill, what should we expect?
Listen, I'd love to tell everyone it's going to be perfect all weekend long. It's just not the way it works in the lower 48. We are going to have some serious weather concerns for some people, especially towards Sunday and Monday. As of now, we're getting rid of this really ugly nor'easter. Temperatures are still in the 40s, and there was even snow at the high elevations of Maine and New Hampshire last night. Pretty wild for this time of year, but airports are doing okay. Just 30-minute delays in New York, and that's not bad. Compared to yesterday, it was much worse than that. So the forecast, as we get to Saturday, we're going to have cool air to the north. It's going to keep you kind of sunny and dry, at least, from Chicago to Minneapolis, and then very hot along the southern half of the country. Where these two air masses meet, that's where all the problems are going to be. That's why we're going to have day after day of thunderstorms, periods of very heavy rain, and flash flooding is going to become a big problem, especially near the Ozarks, southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, pretty much a little sliver there of Oklahoma, too. And eventually, by the time we get to Memorial Day, if you have your picnic and your parade plans, keep an eye on this forecast, especially from the Dallas-Fort Worth area over to Shreveport. severe weather, and the chance of flash flooding. Overall, Sunday, the most dangerous period is this moderate risk from Tulsa to Shreveport, Joplin, southwards down to Fort Smith, including Fayetteville, Arkansas. That's going to be the area of greatest concern for significant flooding in small streams, even some of the larger rivers, too. And we're saying it could get 5 inches of rain in Fort Smith. In the mountainous areas, someone's going to get close to 10 inches of rain. That's a lot of water problems as we head through the upcoming weekend. So, Allison, I didn't mention much about the West Coast or the East Coast. Both of those are looking pretty nice and improving conditions throughout the weekend.
We love that for them. Bill Cairns, thank you. We're learning new information tonight about the suspect in the killing of 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C. Federal prosecutors detailing how they say the 31-year-old carried out the murders before tossing his gun and calmly joining the party inside the Jewish Museum. NBC's Aaron Gilchrist has more.
Tonight, more details are emerging in the deadly shooting outside Washington's Capitol Jewish Museum, where Israeli embassy staffers Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky were killed Wednesday night after leaving a Young Diplomats event. Investigators alleging in court documents that surveillance cameras captured Elias Rodriguez walking past the victims before pulling a gun from his waistband and firing several shots. The documents say Rodriguez then stood over them, appearing to reload and firing several more rounds before tossing the gun and going into the museum.
I go up to him and I say, "Are you okay?" And he goes, call the police, I'm okay.
Paige Siegel attended the event and says she became suspicious and continued to question Rodriguez before he became agitated and grabbed his backpack as police approached.
He's screaming, "Free Palestine, free Palestine."
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
I start screaming, "Get him out, get him out." And I'm screaming to the police, check his bag, check his bag.
Investigators have interviewed Rodriguez and say they're still piecing together his life, trying to talk to people who knew him. Back at the museum, a growing memorial outside to honor the shooting victims. A close friend remembering Sarah as being full of joy and compassion.
These were 2 beautiful souls that worked for peace and that worked to build our community day in and day out. And so to have them being taken away from us in this horrific manner, it just makes no sense.
NBC's Aaron Gilchrist joins us now from D.C. Aaron, the Sabbath began at sundown. Are officials worried about the possibility of copycats? Will there be extra security at high-profile Jewish sites?
Well, there's definitely a stepped-up police presence at sites here in Washington and in other cities, for that matter. We know New York City, for example, stepped up their law enforcement presence around houses of worship, synagogues, churches, around schools and community centers as well. I can tell you we did see a steady D.C. police presence parked outside the museum here. We were down at the Jewish Community Center a little bit earlier today. There were police cruisers parked out there as well, really trying to create a sense of safety and security for members of these communities going forward. We know, as we've spoken to several members of the Jewish community here, that they have been shaken by what happened here on Wednesday night. At the same time, they want to show some resilience. They don't want to live in fear. They are standing up, and there are people, friends, and other parts of the community that are gathering around them in solidarity, all trying to move forward from this tragedy. Ellison.
NBC's Aaron Gilchrist, thank you. We are back in a moment with courage under fire. The neighbors who banded together to save each other after that plane crashed right into their homes. Another prison break, also in Louisiana. The surveillance footage of a man connected to a deadly home invasion breaking loose, how he got out. And close call, take a look at this. The homeowner who woke up to a giant ship grounded right outside his door. We're learning new details tonight about that deadly plane crash in San Diego, including how neighbors rushed in to help each other as homes and cars burned. Video showing the moments of family whose house was hit by the plane made it to safety. NBC's Liz Kreutz has their story.
Come on, your kids are over here.
Tonight, incredible stories emerging after that fiery plane crash in San Diego.
I have to say, I think it was a miracle.
Surinder Good rushing to the neighborhood to help her friends Ben and Srijana McCarty escape.
It really looked like a war zone. The smoke, the fire, there was debris in the road.
The McCarty's home took a direct hit, the plane slamming into their living room.
I woke up to an explosion,
orange. It looked like orange light everywhere, orange glow, and the heat. The heat's the first thing that really hit me.
I was like, we got to get out. We got to get out. What a terrifying way to be jolted awake.
13 years in the military. I've seen a lot of scary things. And it's the scariest thing that I think I'll ever experience.
Come on, let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
The couple grabbed their 2 young children, narrowly getting out through their backyard with the help of neighbors.
Climb the ladder! Climb the ladder! I can't, bro.
They got a step ladder, and we sent the kids up first, and then I jumped over after that, landed pretty hard, and then he sent the dogs over.
Throughout the neighborhood of military housing, similar harrowing stories.
Everybody was running around, going crazy, and there was nothing but flames. People were out there with their water hoses and trying to help with, the flames and everything, and the jet fuel had made a line all the way down every single car on the street on the right side, and literally they were all just blowing up one after the other.
The accident even impacting pets.
You're okay. I know.
San Diego Humane Society workers jumped in to help clean these puppies covered in jet fuel and other evacuated animals. Authorities say the plane clipped a power line before crashing early Thursday. Tributes now pouring in for the victims believed to be on board, including music agent Dave Shapiro and heavy metal drummer Daniel Williams, who had posted shots from the cockpit shortly before takeoff. The NTSB still trying to piece together the cause.
The airplane was not equipped with a flight data recorder. We are trying to determine at this time if the airplane was equipped with a cockpit voice recorder.
Tonight, dozens still displaced, but authorities and neighbors saying it could have been much worse.
Someone asked me earlier, like, am I happy that we were in a military neighborhood? And I would say yes, because the training I know those people have and the quick response, I think that definitely did a lot for us and helped us get out of there and everyone get out of there safe.
And Liz Kreutz joins us now from Los Angeles. Liz, the NTSB is now saying 2 critical systems were actually inoperable at the airport prior to this crash. What more do we know?
Yeah, so according to the NTSB, they've now confirmed that the weather operating system, that basically it's an automated system that alerts pilots to the weather conditions at the airport, that was out of service. And separately and unrelated, at the same time, there was a lighting outage at the airport. So the runway was not illuminated when this pilot was trying to land. All of this happening with dense, foggy conditions, making it very challenging. And this is all part of the investigation right now. They have not given a cause. They're going to be looking into the flight history, the plane, what the pilot, how many hours the pilot has. And because there is not a flight data recorder on this plane, they say video and witness testimony is going to be key, Allison.
NBC's Liz Kreutz, thank you. And when Top Story returns, the Kardashian robbery verdict. The sentences handed down today for the men and woman who tied up and robbed Kim Kardashian. Her reaction tonight. And caught on camera, the moment an Army soldier started firing off blanks at a crowded Florida beach, how those beachgoers reacted. Back now with Top Story's news feed. The Department of Justice and Boeing reaching a deal that allows the aircraft maker to avoid prosecution in 2 deadly 737 MAX crashes. The decision means Boeing won't face trial related to 2 crashes that killed 346 people. The airline will have to pay or invest more than $1.1 billion. Boeing did not comment on the agreement, but a family member of one of the victims saying it sends a message that, quote, big companies are above the law, even when they kill. An update in the Rush shooting case. The film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, released today from a New Mexico prison. The New Mexico Corrections Department says she was let out early this morning on dual supervision in Arizona. That is where she will be on parole for 1 year and probation. In April of last year, she was sentenced to 18 months in prison, but received more than 3 months of credit for good behavior, according to the Corrections Department. She was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in the shooting death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the Rust film set in 2021. Wild surveillance footage showing the moment a car flew out of a New Jersey parking garage, landing just steps from a daycare. Look at this. The car is seen going airborne and flipping upside down, landing in bushes, scattering bricks and debris on the sidewalk below. It happened this morning in Jersey City. The driver was not seriously injured and was able to get out of the car on her own. She was checked out by paramedics and then taken to a local hospital. She meant to reverse and instead drove forward and off of the second floor, according to a spokesperson for the mayor's office. And some happy news for a stray dog in Southern California captured on video facing off with a pack of coyotes. Duke, a German Shepherd Lab mix, was captured on surveillance video earlier this month, battling at least 5 coyotes for 45 minutes outside a home in Orange County. After that claim to fame, Duke was brought to a local shelter and adopted. We turn now to Louisiana, where yet another inmate has escaped from a New Orleans area jail. This latest jailbreak coming as 5 other inmates remain at large as authorities continue to arrest friends as well as family for allegedly aiding in their escape. George Solis is in New Orleans with the details.
Tonight, yet another brazen breakout from a jail just outside New Orleans. Authorities say this video shows 22-year-old Trevon Johnson scaling a fence with a boost from another inmate, then making a run for it.
He took advantage of a vulnerable moment and seized it. It was a comedy of errors.
22-year-old Johnson is facing homicide and other charges. The sheriff said he escaped after inmates flooded a cell with water and a back door was opened.
My message to Mr. Trevon Johnson is that we will find you, and my best advice to you is to turn yourself in.
Meanwhile, 5 inmates are still on the loose after last week's jailbreak in New Orleans. Authorities announcing 3 more arrests of people they say aided the inmates, one a fellow inmate. While on the outside, Casey Smith admitted helping transport 2 inmates to multiple locations after they broke out, according to police. And authorities say Connie Whedon was in contact with inmate Jermaine Donald before and after his escape and gave him cash via a phone app. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill says a network of family and friends may be helping the men avoid capture.
We've looked at those kinds of connections in connection with all of the people from the very beginning to try and trace down those people that they might reach out to and rely on for help.
George Solis joins us now from New Orleans. George, we just learned of yet another accomplice being arrested.
Yeah, that's right, Ellison. New Orleans police putting out a video of another arrest of a man this time they say was an accomplice to helping the initial 10 inmates escape. He's been charged with accessory after the fact. No other details at this point, but again, this now brings the number of people on the outside who authorities say have helped some of these inmates to 6. Majority of them women. This is the first male outside of that inmate they accused of helping as well.
George Solis, thank you. Moving overseas now into the latest in Gaza, where food security experts warn 93% of the population is facing acute food shortages. This as the latest Israeli strikes claim dozens of lives across the region, and international leaders call for more aid to be brought in. NBC's Matt Bradley joins us now from Tel Aviv. Matt, with the Israeli offensive escalating, how severe is the humanitarian crisis in Gaza right now?
Yeah, Ellison, we're seeing Israel's attacks on the Gaza Strip that they say are targeting Hamas increasing day after day with this expansive new offensive. 60 people have been killed in just the past 24 hours, according to Palestinian health authorities in the Gaza Strip, which is ruled by Hamas. Now, this comes just a couple of days after Israel ever so slightly loosened its 11-week-long blockade of the Gaza Strip, allowing in what they said were more than 400 truckloads of aid into Gaza. But the United Nations and Palestinian officials have said that only a little more than 100 have actually gotten through and are now being distributed to the public who are in desperate need. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, said that so far no aid has gotten to the north of the Gaza Strip, where a lot of the fighting is happening. He said that there are about 160,000 pallets of aid waiting to enter the Gaza Strip, enough to fill 9,000 trucks, but they haven't been able to enter. Now, one of the challenges is security. The World Food Program said that about a dozen of its trucks had been looted by armed gunmen. And this is a measure of the desperation that we've been seeing after this 11-week-long blockade. Another measure of that desperation and the need is that about 24 people or more have been killed by malnutrition-related illnesses. And this, according to the Palestinian health authorities in Gaza. Now, we heard, again, from the UN Secretary General, also from the head of UNRWA. They said that they needed about 500 to 600 truckloads of food and aid every single day in order to meet the need. And they said that when there was a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, that amount was getting in and it wasn't getting looted. So they're calling on more security and more access to the Gaza Strip in order to meet the incredible need of the more than 2 million people there. Ellison?
Matt Bradley, thank you. And staying overseas with top stories, Global Watch. At least 17 people are injured, 4 in critical condition after a knife attack at one of Germany's busiest train stations in Hamburg. According to the local fire department, police are saying that they arrested a 39-year-old woman while their investigation is still underway. A police spokesperson says they believe she acted alone. And right now, there is no immediate indication of a political motive. This is the second major knife attack in Germany this week. And new videos seeming to show the moment the wife of OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush heard the Titan sub imploding with her husband on board.
500 meters, 30. What was that thing?
You can hear there what sounds like a door slamming. Then she asks, what was that bang? The United States Coast Guard says it believes that noise was the sound of the implosion reaching the water's surface. The OceanGate underwater vessel known as the Titan was on a deep-sea mission to the Titanic when it imploded in 2023, killing all 5 on board. And imagine this. You wake up to a container ship outside of your home, just missing your bedroom, and your neighbor is the one to warn you. That was the reality for a man in Norway. He found the 442-foot-long ship outside his house early yesterday. He told local media it was just a few feet further south. If it was just a few feet further south, it would have actually entered into his bedroom. He says he actually slept through the entire thing and only woke up when his neighbor started ringing his doorbell. Police are investigating what caused the ship to go off course and run around, and they say they have one suspect in custody. A guilty verdict handed down today for 8 people, including the mastermind in the armed robbery of Kim Kardashian in Paris. 3 judges and 6 jurors coming to the decision nearly a decade after a group that was nicknamed the Grandpa Robbers were charged in the 2016 heist. They were accused of stealing $9 million worth of jewelry from Kardashian inside her Paris apartment. NBC's Danielle Hamamdin joins us now from London. Danielle, there were a total of 10 people involved in this crime, right? But not all of them, or allegedly involved, I should say, because not all of them were found guilty. Could you walk us through what went down in that courtroom today and what happens next?
Yeah, well, what a day for Kim Kardashian, nearly a decade after this all happened. 2 of the 10 had actually admitted taking part in this ordeal, but not to the extent claimed by the prosecution. But in the end, 8 out of the 10 were found guilty, and the sentences range from fines to prison sentences. But in the end, no one will go to prison given time already served before the trial. Among them, you mentioned, Ellison, the ringleader, Old Omar is his nickname. He is found guilty of theft with a weapon and kidnapping without voluntary liberation. He is known as a veteran of the Paris criminal underworld. His DNA had been found in the zip ties used on Kim Kardashian. Earlier today, before the verdict, he said in court that I beg 1,000 pardons. Another of the defendants found guilty went on to write a book entitled I Kidnapped Kim Kardashian. He, too, begged for forgiveness. Most of them were in their 60s and 70s, which is why the French media dubbed them the Grandpa Robbers, Papy Braqueurs in French. But as I say, given time served before the trial, none of them will actually go to prison after today.
So, Danielle, have we heard anything from Kim Kardashian since these verdicts came back?
We did. We heard from her in a statement that came out shortly after the verdict was handed down, and I'll read it to you. She said, I am deeply grateful to the French authorities for pursuing justice in this case. The crime was the most terrifying experience of my life, leaving a lasting impact on me and my family. While I'll never forget what happened, I believe in the power of growth and accountability and pray for healing for all. I remain committed to advocating for justice and promoting a fair legal system. And just yesterday, Kim Kardashian posting pictures of herself graduating from a law program she committed 6 years of her life to, and she's finally graduated. So quite a week for Kim Kardashian, Ellison.
To say the least. Danielle Hamamdin, thank you. We are back in just a moment with the Army soldier firestorm over this wild scene in Florida. one of them firing off blanks at a crowded beach. We'll tell you why. We're back now with an alarming scene off the coast of Florida. A soldier caught on camera in uniform, appearing to shoot a gun into the air from inside of a boat at a crowded public beach. His battalion in town for a pirate festival involving fake skirmishes, but authorities say this was not part of the act. NBC's Jesse Kirsch has this one.
The video show an apparent uniformed American soldier pointing a rifle to the sky and opening fire in the Florida Panhandle's crowded waters. The incident happened last Friday just near Crab Island, but now these videos are circulating widely. And tonight the U.S. Army says those gunshots appear to be blanks, but the consequences for the soldiers are real. A military spokesman confirming to NBC News that 18 soldiers with the 6th Ranger Training Battalion were temporarily decertified as instructors after they allegedly fired blank rounds from their weapons at a public beach.
My group was freaks, and they were freaked out.
Charter boat captain Cameron Ellsworth says he witnessed the bizarre incident with several passengers.
When you see what appear to be U.S. Army soldiers in broad daylight, surrounded by the public, firing rifles into the air, what's going through your mind when you see that?
I mean, I'm hoping that we're not going to have an incident here. I'm thinking, am I in the middle of what's about to be a famous incident? Is this going to be a mass shooting? Is this some kind of a terrorist attack?
Ellsworth also says he took this photo, which he says shows some soldiers chugging beers.
Is there any explanation that could justify that behavior?
No. I mean, you could go out there and have a good time in your uniforms without shooting assault rifles into the air.
The incident coincided with the annual Billy Bowlegs Pirate Festival, a 4-day event that included soldiers from the 6th Ranger Training Battalion engaging in a mock sea battle, which included soldiers firing blanks from their weapons, according to the city of Fort Walton Beach. But the city says the incident now under scrutiny was not part of the Billy Bowlegs Pirate Festival and was not approved by the city or organizers. All of this playing out near a U.S. Air Force base.
Some of these guys might have PTSD, and here you go, triggering that. So it's not a respectful, honorable thing to do.
Jesse Kirsch joins us now from Miami. Jesse, in your report, you said these soldiers are temporarily decertified as instructors. Do we know what they're doing right now?
We don't, Ellison, and we've asked the military about that specifically. Of course, I think something that comes to mind as a parallel is when there are police officers involved in incidents involving a firearm being discharged, and then we hear something like desk duty or administrative duty. So we've been looking for some kind of comparison in the military realm on this, but we don't have clarity fully from the military on this point for the time being. We also have explicitly asked the military if this group of soldiers during this investigation is still allowed to carry a firearm in the course of whatever duties they are carrying out. And the spokesperson for the military, who spoke with our producer Maura, said that he did not know definitively whether or not they are prohibited from carrying firearms for the time being.
Really
Ellison.
Interesting report. Jesse Kirsch, thank you. And thank you so much for watching Top Story. I'm Ellison Barber in New York for Tom Llamas. Stay right there. More news is on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.